We are former DoD employees speaking in our personal capacity only. Nothing we say reflects the official position of the U.S. government or any agency. All content is based on publicly available open source information. No classified material is ever discussed.
All right, welcome to this week. Ron is going to start us off with our politically adjacent topic, or might get a bit more political than just adjacent, but yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so looking at some of the top stories, the one that definitely popped up as far as a lot of mixed reporting, so I decided to take a look at it. I guess you can call it the White House biased exposed website launch, or so they advertise it. So this story kind of centers on the Trump's administration's launch of a dedicated web page on the official White House site, their whitehouse.gov. That was back on November 28th, so not that long ago. And it's titled Misleading, period, Biased, period, Exposed, period. So this is an interactive tool that's their advertising that serves as a public database and a rapid response mechanism to catalog and critique what the administration deems as distorted, biased, or outright false reporting on President Trump and his policies. And then the site features several key components. They've got a media offender of the week, and I'll just list through these real quick and then we go back and discuss it. So they've got media offender of the week, and then they have an offender hall of shame, and then they have the broader database and tip line. So, see something, say something, and let them know about fake media, fake news. So we'll go into it a little bit. Let me explain what the kind of the divide and spread of what's in the news media on this. It kind of ranges from showing how this, or reporting that this escalates the president's long-standing media feuds. And I think that's probably a pretty accurate broad statement there. Building on personal insults against him, which, we've seen lots of examples of how he handles that. And then also the timings aligning with Trump's sagging approval ratings, just a correlation. Of course, it depends on what you look at, but per late November, Reuters and a couple others, we're looking at about a 38% approval rating, which it's only down 2 points from early November. And then, there's been a lot of activity just in government as a whole with the
With the shutdown
branch.
and all of that going on.
Yeah.
So
So we'll definitely go into more breakdown, but what comes to mind? What's your reaction?
Immediately, I'm skeptical because this is the current administration calling out the free press and saying where, in their opinion, the free press is wrong. And it's not exactly stepping on the First Amendment. I mean, they're still letting them print whatever they want, but I know I'm being biased here because the president has had a very tumultuous relationship with the press. Hence, when he came back into office back in January, they did essentially a shakedown of all of the White House press correspondence. And there's obviously some favoritism to the outlets that, paint him in a positive light. So, I mean, it's, I don't think that there's any historical precedent for this, at least in modern memory.
Well, not on the internet anyway.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
but functionally, what would have been the equivalent other than just verbal, arguments?
Right.
Press conferences, right?
The White House putting out press statements has basically been the longest standing method by which the White House communicates with the people. And it's up to the press junkets to take that information and, publish it, because the White House doesn't have its own, until now, didn't have its own means by which to push information out to the American public. So I you can definitely tell by the three categories that you listed: the media offender of the week, the offender hall of shame, and the broader database and tip line. I mean, that last one's kind of a throwaway, but like the first two, you have two offenders. So you're automatically creating a bias in the reader of this person is wrong, regardless of what they're talking about.
Yeah, you're not leaving it open for someone to make up their mind based on their ability to process the information.
Right. And, you have to think that the majority of the people that are going to be going to this website are probably MAGA, and they want to see how the administration's slamming down on the press,
Well, you
this
might have a point there.
Yeah. Yeah, this kind of ties into our episode 0 topic when we were talking about the seditious six. The senators, including Ulysses Locken and Mark Kelly, who were telling the U.S. military and intelligence personnel to not follow illegal orders. And, we got into that, obviously. Well, not obvious to us. That episode did not record properly. So we had a nice dry run for our podcast in that regard. But, yeah, this it stinks of, media bias in the other direction, let's say.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, kind of the spread, and I think, obviously not everybody can be right when they have opposing, but opposing views aren't necessarily wrong. It's perception.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of important not to throw out a perception, because if you're going to have some understanding of how people are seeing things and how to react to it, you need to understand their perspective.
Yes, absolutely. You need to get information from both sides of the aisle, in the news sphere, because the truth is always going to lie somewhere in the middle.
Usually, yeah, that's by far usually the case. There's in the media right now, outside of that website,
mm-hmm.
There's one side that's really advocating that this is a great way to, really call out activist journalists and failing outlets peddling hoaxes.
And I can immediately think of which news agencies
it's
are
no
going
secret.
that route. Yeah.
I mean, they get the finger pointed right at them and called out at like every time they meet. So, and then they're talking about real truth and accountability, but then on the other end of reporting, you get exactly what you were pointing out, that it's kind of an unflattering, on the administration, it's unflattering behavior,
mm-hmm.
and it's potentially inciting harassment or ad boycotts. Now, it's one thing, as politicians, you need to stay away from that.
Yes.
Calling for boycotts and things like that. That's outside of, if it's illegal, then take other action.
Right.
If it's not, leave it up to the people.
Yes. The people will decide.
Yeah, of course, they didn't quite come out and say that, but that's not what they're accusing here, right? Mm-hmm. They're saying it could potentially incite harassment or ad boycotts.
Right.
And it's, then you get into, like you were bringing up, First Amendment rights.
Mm-hmm.
But, the common example when, you're trying to teach people, young kids, and
right.
a common one is, well, yes, everyone has the freedom to speak their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can flip off a police officer. It's not a great idea and it's very rude, but it's protected. They can't arrest you for it.
Right.
But at the same time, you can't walk into a movie theater. Well, you can. You can walk into a movie theater and start screaming fire. As a lawyer told me once, everybody has the right to be stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But even they are held responsible for their stupid decisions, right?
Yes.
So now you're inciting something that could be harm to the public. and to be public. That's not everybody, but
Right.
to a sector of the public. So, I think that perception is something that is worth noting.
Right.
Perhaps there's a way to. Look, you can please some of the people all the time. You can please some of the people all the time, but you can never please all the people all the time.
Yes.
But I think it's worth. It's something worth taking a look at and seeing if you can tweak it and adjust.
Right. No, that's totally valid. I think that the idea of this definitely did not come from the best place. When the majority of the media, as they call it, the liberal media, is criticizing every action that the president and the administration takes, then you do want to punch back, so to speak. It's probably not a surprise that the left side of the media is calling this an intimidation tactic, which is definitely on brand. I mean, again, it remains to be seen what the outcome of this will be. It strikes me as a way to bolster the base, and that's pretty much it. I don't see anyone going to
You don't
this
see anyone
website.
else looking at it.
No, I don't see anyone going to this site, like anyone in the center going to this site and being like, oh, yeah, they said that. And then, the White House says it's wrong because of this. And, siding with
It's no
administration.
different than you have your favorite comedians, and there's comedians out there that are very popular,
Yep.
and they do really well. And for whatever the reason, you just don't like their style as a comedian,
Right.
even though you go, well, on paper, that joke is no less tasteful than my favorite comedian's joke. I just don't like. Makes me cringe when they
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah.
And so,
It's the delivery.
Delivery. There we go. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a lot of it. Something I did not look into, and I wish now I had, is so. From my understanding, and I think I had this pretty accurate. The news media, obviously, they have a First Amendment protections to be able to publish, whatever they want, as long as they don't cross some of those, extreme examples,
Yes.
However, that's protection under criminal law.
Okay.
On civil side, they can say whatever they want about you.
Oh, yeah.
But in civil court, you can sue them for libel, slander, and they can
Yep.
get found guilty of slander or libel,
Yeah.
and you can win a settlement,
Right.
and they could lose their license,
Well,
they could this,
the,
they could that.
The president just won the settlement with the BBC, and, a couple of people at the top just lost their jobs over it. I mean, granted, that was a very blatant editing of a speech that completely misrepresented and changed the tone of what the president was saying.
Yeah,
during
and I'm
that,
not arguing with that one
yeah.
bit. And I think that shows that there is precedence. I don't think that was that's something that happens on the regular outside of levels of the presidency, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
My question where I'm curious, and maybe there's no precedence once again, just like using the internet this way. And nothing comes to mind. But my question is, Donald Trump can sue for libel or, slander.
Yep.
Can the office of the president, can the executive branch do it? It's on their the wh.gov website.
Right.
It's not at the real Donald Trump.
It's
Right.
not on Truth Social.
So I think I'm curious. I don't have an opinion because I don't know what the facts are in that regard.
Right. Yeah,
And I think that if there's any meat there, I think it's something we might see pop up if this stays a hot topic that keeps coming around.
Yeah. Definitely keep an eye on that how that plays out. All right.
Yeah.
What else you got for us today?
Yeah. So also in the news is, and I think pretty much everybody's heard at least something about it, is this Trump ultimatum to the Venezuela President Maduro. And it's been like, that's about all we know as far as that. I mean, we know a few details we can go into, but they've been keeping a very tight lip, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But there was basically just the one day where it came out that, so a little background. We know that there's been posturing of the U.S. Navy off the coast of Venezuela. We know there's been activities, anti-narco activities coming out of that the U.S. is conducting against narcotics coming out of Venezuela, or at least that's the intent. And then Trump came out and said here, a few days ago, essentially told Maduro, you're stepping down, and here are your options. We can talk about you going to a couple of countries. You can we will give you safe passage. Yeah, we'll give you safe passage to you, your wife, select party members and family members.
Yep.
And you let us know, call who you need to call. Let's make this happen, or else. And as far as we know, the or else is that's all we know.
Yeah.
But there's a significant amount of Navy assets and other things ready to rock and roll.
Right.
It's been advertised that there are elements of special forces locked and loaded, ready to go, in position. I think I even saw something, and I don't have it in front of me. I think I just saw something today, though, that there's some U.S. assets sitting in Colombia on the other side of the water, other side of Venezuela. And, then I started looking at where do you think this is going to go? I mean, there's so much here you could talk about. What do you think Maduro's going to do? And this isn't really my area of the world where I've ever really done much. Not culturally, not geographically. This is kind of new to me. Yeah, not professionally.
Yeah.
Other than doing analysis, right? Just basic analysis.
Yeah, and the majority of my knowledge on Venezuela and the history there has just been out of, personal curiosity. Because again, I never worked, South America from a professional perspective. But I know, let's let's air out the obvious. The U.S. has a long and established history of removing quote unquote dictators.
No.
And I know
they're good at that part.
It's shocking to some. Yeah.
Yeah, they're good at that part.
Right. And Maduro, he's been the president of Venezuela since 2013.
And that was when Chavez passed away, essentially.
Yeah. He was essentially selected by name, and then he ended up quote unquote winning over 50% of the vote for the Socialist Party there in Venezuela. And then after that, he rearranged the they call it a National Assembly. I can't remember if they have a parliament.
Their version of it, yeah.
Yeah. With their help, he rewrote the Constitution and essentially became president for life. So he hasn't had to go up against any elections since then. Or there may have been.
Ironically, that makes you a target for the U.S. then, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Now, I think there were there have been elections, but obviously he's won every single without any real competition. Which is something that someone in his position can easily make happen each go around. But yeah, as far as the ultimatum.
Well, I think it's important. We didn't discuss what Maduro's public response to the ultimatum was. You remember that one?
That's true.
Yeah.
Remind me.
Yeah, he basically, in short, in a nutshell, he went on, I guess it's their national television. You can look it up on YouTube, and basically was like, no, we will be victorious, and I don't get told what to do by, whatever slanderous terms he was using. It was translated, and I think it might have been kind of a loose translation. I'm not very good with my foreign languages. But
El español.
Yeah, any of them. That's your area
Yeah.
of familiarity. Um, what we do know is at a minimum, on that. Okay, so that ultimatum would, at that phase, is diplomatic in nature. He's given a diplomatic,
Mm-hmm.
in a legal way, not just speaking. He was given
Yeah.
a diplomatic solution,
Right.
which he publicly turned down, said absolutely not. Now, it could be he's stalling,
Mm-hmm.
right? We don't know what he's going to do. We know that Qatar brokered some phone calls. They offered kind of some very slim options for him to
Right.
go to exile, essentially, right? To help broker and facilitate that. It would appear that what we're seeing in the media that the Trump administration's using, one could argue that it's a fairly aggressive information operation. Putting them on blast and coming across very, I guess, to steal some terminology, Trump came across very firmly, right? And I think that's a pretty fair statement. On the military front, there's bringing in a carrier strike group is a pretty big hammer.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of capability there, and of course all the things that come with them. They bring drones. They've got SOF in Colombia. They've got kind of a shock and awe is how it looks, right?
Yeah.
The capability to do shock and awe. Everyone's in shock. Everyone's in awe, and they're waiting to see if they drop the hammer.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe it'd be worth mentioning a little bit on the economic front. Currently they're in a bit of a chokehold, Venezuela, from the U.S. Western side of things. They've got a lot of sanctions. But going back just a little background, Venezuela, not super recently, but Chavez Maduro timeframe, they told the U.S. oil companies, well, at least the U.S. ones, who had major operations down there extracting crude oil, and I think, if I remember correctly, there's even at least one major refinery. I'd have to double check that. And they declared it essentially, hey, your leases are null and void. This is state property.
Yeah.
And,
well, that's what you do as a good socialist leader. You nationalize all of your country's infrastructure because it's, owned by the people.
Right. No capitalist reason to stay. You can work for free. I'm sure they would have been happy to let, the major oil companies do it for free. Of course, they didn't. So, but the reason I bring that up is those are, might come into play with where we might kind of expect this to go. If you're trying to predict, make an assessment of, what's going to happen in the near future. Right. And of course, the further out you go, the harder it is to accurately make an assessment.
Yeah.
But, you sit there and do a little research on, well, what are Venezuela's easily accessed, meaning it's not going to take 10, 20 years to start seeing a return. What do they have that the remaining populace, when either Maduro leaves or he is otherwise removed, and it is possible, potentially. So they're reporting that he only won by 20% of the vote this last election.
Right.
And then I think he basically declared it. I don't think they were expecting that whatsoever. And then basically he just said, well, he pulled up kind of that thing we might be familiar with. Well, it was a bad election, bad vote. I'm still president.
Yeah. Essentially, they tried to make the elections legitimate by not rigging them. And then they got stomped in the foot by the results.
Right.
So, I mean, good on them for trying to be honest, but that obviously only went up to a certain point.
I'd be willing to assess that the current U.S. administration has no interest in a prolonged operation down there.
Mm-hmm.
And once they get rid of Maduro, however that goes down, that they would like to, as quickly as possible, work with who is there. And I would offer up as little evidence, precedence. Look at Syria. Not real happy with the president of Syria and his
Right.
history, but
Yeah.
would rather work with him
Mm-hmm.
if we can. To what ends would we be helping the Venezuelans? And my first thought is, quite obviously, is, oil. Like, it seems like we have quite the appetite.
Yes.
Even if we're not getting the oil directly, which historically we were at one point,
Right.
getting a lot of Venezuelan oil. And it's not just, probably wouldn't be shipping it necessarily to the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
but it used to be a lot of cargo vessels.
Yes.
A lot of vessels would swing by Venezuela to fuel up because it's so cheap.
Yeah. I do seem to remember Citgo being in the news years back for their dependence on Venezuelan oil when Chavez was in power. And, you talk about if he is removed or leaves, who's there to fill the power void? And he's had multiple attempts on his life over his tenure.
Oh, yeah.
At least two or three immediately come to mind. Obviously, there was some U.S. adjacent involvement in those. Because, again, the U.S. doesn't like dictators. And if there's an opportunity to remove them, it's going to make the world better. And who better than the world police to do it?
Yeah, especially when it involves economics.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's
I do know that just last month, a couple weeks ago, the administration labeled him and his allies as member of a foreign terrorist group.
well, if nothing else, it's convenient.
Yeah.
I don't know the details, so that's all I will say. It's at a minimum, it's convenient.
Right. It doesn't provide them authority to strike, but it did give them the ability to place stronger sanctions on
True.
the administration.
True. And then of course on a fair front, it would depend a bit on how you define, if they're accepting money and they're benefiting directly from labeled terrorist operations, though that's a whole other conversation about
Yeah.
that part. And I'm just
Well,
saying
when-
that from
when
the
you let-
perspective that
yeah.
terrorists aren't motivated by making money as capitalists. They're motivated by
Right.
ideology, typically.
Yes. No, absolutely. And I think that there was a pretty loose interpretation of the word terrorist used when that decision was made by the administration. And of course, the administration probably thinks that being able to designate them does justify conducting military strikes because that's exactly what we've done for the past 30 plus years.
Yeah, it also frees you up from a lot of Geneva Convention
Yeah.
guidelines and
Yeah.
rules.
I could see this going one of three ways, and I will do a most likely and most dangerous, and then my personal assessed
whack,
course of
yeah.
action. Yeah. So most likely he is not going to leave office voluntarily, which will then result in an increase in tensions and possibly some strikes. The most dangerous is that he builds up his military forces along the coast and in the coastal waters, and there is direct conflict between the U.S. and Venezuela.
I would agree. I would further that with from me is I think to your worst case scenario is if Venezuela go straight to guerrilla tactics and not
Well,
direct open warfare.
yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Guerrilla tactics don't really work on the open sea, though.
No, they don't. It's a little hard to go up against an
It's
aircraft
fine.
carrier strike group.
Yeah, it's fine when you're a Somali pilot in a speedboat going after oil tankers in the Indian Ocean. It's a lot different when you're, you know, Venezuelan special forces in speedboats going up against frigates and destroyers and carriers with, the amount of overwatch that the Navy currently has from all of its, you know, radar and drones and all of their ISR integration. It's all about fleet protection.
Right. So that's the worst case. What do you think is what's your next one?
Yeah, so I gave you the most likely and my most dangerous. My thought on this is that it's going to come to a tipping point and a third party will step in to try and mediate things.
I think that's probably most likely, assuming. I would say, I think the big potential wild card is what does the majority of the populace stand up for?
Right.
I mean, it's one thing to sit there and say, behind closed doors and in quiet meetings, oh, yeah, I support the U.S.'s move and blah, blah, blah. But when push comes to shove, and that's why I mentioned kind of guerrilla tactics.
Yeah. Are you willing to take up arms?
Are you willing? Yeah. Are you willing to take up arms? Are you willing to push the opposition out?
Right.
If the majority of the populace, and I don't mean a thin majority, I mean, if only 20% voted for Maduro, so if you're telling me 80% of the population, and we'll just take that for what it's worth on the surface, then I think a third party stepping in has got a great viable chance.
Yeah. I don't know exactly, like I know you said 80% surface level. I don't know that 80% that didn't vote for him, who actually voted. Because
That's
at
the
that
big question.
point,
Yeah.
at that point, they probably thought, what's the point in voting? He's just going to stay in office.
Well, human nature is interesting. You can almost, the statistical ability to predict when a society is going to revolt or become insurgents or rebels.
Right.
As a whole, I'm not talking an ideological group that's making a move, but I'm talking the majority of a populace. They can do it for a lot of reasons, but when that populace, their perception is they have no choices, zero choices. That's usually when they start taking action.
Yes.
Now, that's not to say if they feel like they have a choice, they do nothing. And I think in this particular situation, I think perhaps if the populace feels like they have a choice, a viable choice, that they may actually, stand up. It's just, it also works on the other side too. If the current, political party members, the active people that are getting ousted or trying to be ousted, if they feel like they have zero viable options, that's where my concern of how far are they going to go? What are they going to, to us, it makes the most sense. Like, yeah, buddy, you're not going to win this. It's time to go. Take the trip to the Middle East and live out your days. You can take a big chunk of money with you and get it all protected and go live out your days somewhere and have a Facebook page, start a podcast, have fun. And,
although if you think about the countries that are friendly with Venezuela and where he could potentially go and be welcomed as a hero, you've got Russia, Iran,
Cuba.
Cuba.
Not quite the same lifestyle.
Actually, yeah, Cuba would definitely be the place
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be a visiting or deposed dictator in Russia right now. They've got enough issues.
Yeah. So, yeah, that one, there's only so much we can really, you can guess all day long. You can make some educated guesses, but I think there's such tight lips on this one.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really seen any examples of any leaks on the U.S. side as to what's happening, what's going to happen, what are the plans.
Yeah, it's definitely been a lot quieter than I'd say any previous military actions in the last 10 years. Yeah, easily, because I mean, you think in the last 10 years, what have we done that has been touted as a monumental success and earned the support of the American people? Not much.
I'm sure I'd have to go back and do a little research, but the only thing that just comes to mind just like that during my lifetime is Panama.
Well, yeah, if you go back that far.
Hey, don't call me old.
Older.
Older. I'm maturing, okay?
Yes.
All right. Well, I have a feeling we may see this one resurface, depending on what the future holds.
Absolutely.
I want to talk real quick about something on the science tech front.
Yeah.
I think it dovetails kind of well with our botched episode 0.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to hear your input. So this one has to do with a quantum spin ice breakthrough, and I had no idea what that is. In fact, I really don't know anything about quantum physics. I'll just admit it. I try to wrap my head around it, and the more I study it, and the more I hear the experts, which I'm glad they say it, they go, well, we don't know either. And then they explain what they mean by that. So, they're doing a ton of tests and a ton of experiments and trying to figure out what they can essentially predictably manipulate.
Okay.
That's been a real problem in physics, and they've been making headway, but that was, things do not behave the same. So on this particular story, this is basically, and I'm going to leave off all the science techie words. One, because I have trouble pronouncing them, and two, I mean, if you know what these are, you're way ahead of us on the news story anyway. But essentially, they take a 2D material, and from what I understood from a couple of sources, assuming they're right, they basically start with a 2D graphene sheet, but they make a lot of modifications and manipulations of it and embed other elements. Or elements is probably the wrong term. But then they apply an ultra-high magnetic field up to 70 Teslas, which, per my understanding, that is a lot.
Yeah.
At near absolute zero temps, which we've been able to go almost to 0 Kelvin for a few decades now. That's not particularly new, but perhaps in this particular setting, maybe there's that is obviously they go as far as they can, which is probably difficult. Mm-hmm. But when they did this, the electrons and the holes, where the electrons are absent, they're able to pair into what they're calling excitons. But the unique thing here, excitons aren't new, but what's unique is their spins align in a triplet configuration. And they're describing it as like a frustrated, jammed ice molecules. Here's the important part: unable to settle into order. So ice typically locks, right?
Yeah.
It locks up. And typical cube of ice, water that's now frozen. It's frozen to us physically, but it's not at 0 Kelvin. So electrons and the molecules are still moving and bouncing, but they've now locked into a crystalline type structure, and we could get all down in the queep of, well, there's actually other phases of ice and it changes to crystalline form, but the important thing is it's a crystalline form. This,
Right.
however, does not lock into a crystalline type form. And what they've gotten from this under a spectroscope is they're showing a phase transition where the conductivity drops sharply. There's emergent magnons, photo-like quasi-particles,
Right.
that appear at near zero energy, and then the system glows with a high frequency light, which,
Okay.
for those that follow a lot of the quantum computing, there's a lot of entangled light
Yep.
scenarios going on there, among other things. But the important thing is it's very stable. It's a liquid-like quantum phase, even though they're describing it as ice, but it can't lock in. Therefore, it's still kind of a liquid-like phase.
Okay. So kind of like when water is frozen, it creates a crystalline structure.
Right. This doesn't do that type of behavior. So they've obviously this is what they were trying to achieve, ish, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've now done it, theorized it for a while. It's the first time they've been able to do it. So here's where it gets kind of interesting. Like, what do you do with this, right? So what they realized is that there's, and that's where I think it ties into your story last week, was with all of computing, and anyone that's familiar with their hard drives and the data is slowly corrupting, entropy is a real problem. You flip your bits from 1 to 0. Essentially,
Right.
everyone's pretty familiar with that. And then after you switch 1 to a 1 and another 1 to a 0, and you want it to stay that way until you change it, and then
Right.
entropy happens, things affect it. Literally, the dust in your pocket can carry a
Yes.
static charge and screw it up, right?
That's the problem with magnetic storage. So that's why we've moved away from it.
Yeah. So, but entropy still applies to a lot of other things.
Yes.
This one is not showing that kind of entropy.
Okay.
Now, I don't really understand this stuff too well. I have a feeling perhaps that near zero, absolute zero, probably has some help with that.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
what they've noticed is from what the studies they've done is the entropy once and they can control these spins.
Mhm.
When they do that, it stays.
Okay.
Which has, when you're working with quantum computers and if you have some sort of idea of scale of how much processing is happening, and you start applying the rules of entropy, and you start realizing how much data you're losing, and now you're using other programs to try to plug the holes of the
Right.
missing data. Like, this is pretty significant.
Yeah. And I'll preface everything I'm about to say with, like, I have a baseline understanding of quantum physics. I cannot do any of the math, but I can follow along well enough that when someone's explaining it to me as an analyst, I can see how the pieces fit together.
Yeah, you get a little excited when you're like, oh, so this
Yeah.
is this related to this? And when they go, yes, you go,
Yeah.
okay, so I have a little
Yeah.
bit of a grasp. You know?
Right. Yes. Yeah. I can tie the things together. I can't, break out the chalkboard and show you how it works. People much smarter than I are doing that on a regular basis. So this is very interesting because this definitely has the potential for quantum computing, because if you can control these atoms at the quantum level, then you essentially can negate the errors inherent to a quantum system. Like in episode 0, I was talking about Google's quantum computer and how they have 105 qubits, and they're using most of the qubits as error correction for the qubits that are handling the data.
Right.
Because, it's a...
Yeah, I made that connection. I feel smart
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, because in a trinary computer system, a quantum computer system, you have your ones, you have your zeros, and then you have your superposition. And the superposition essentially gives you 33% more computing ability, but it's exponential. So
Right. So
it's
so for real quick, if somebody missed that,
yeah,
it's not multiplying. Like it's not 2 times 2
right.
on a grid, right? Now
Yeah,
you have four.
it's two squared.
Yeah.
It's two squared,
Well, that's okay. Two's a
squared,
two.
squared.
Yeah, two's a bad example. Let's
It
use a
is,
different
yes.
number. 10. Let's go with 10. It's not 10 by 10. Now we have 20.
Right.
It's 100.
Yes, exactly. And they're calling it ice, but it's actually more like a liquid, from my understanding of what you read. But it's still using these high magnetic fields proved that we have the ability to control matter at the quantum level. That's definitely a breakthrough.
I mean, in my very simple mind, and I'm sure I'm going to make every physicist, quantum physicist just cringe when I say this, but I go, my simple brain, I go, okay. In a way, it's like taking ice and running it through a garden hose.
Yeah.
And going, hey, I can put this ice wherever I want it, like it's a liquid, but once I put it somewhere, it stays exactly how I want it because it's ice, but it flows like liquid.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say that I doubt our one listener is a quantum physicist.
No. Maybe someday if he's young enough.
Yeah. The other thing that I happen to be familiar with is Spintronics, which uses electrons spin up and down.
So that's not a 90s dance game.
No. It uses electron spin as an additional degree of storage or transport.
Yeah, I remember reading that, yeah.
Yeah, so you've got your, electron spin one way or the other. If you can control that, which is what they're doing here, then you can begin to use that to store information or transmit information.
Yeah, and so mentioning, being able to scale, you're adding multiple. You've got one item and that's not just 1 or 0. You can get more information out of it. Yeah. And that's one of the things when I was reading up it was a few years ago on the research on using quantum light particle entanglement to communicate. Of course, they're not feasible on scale, but when they experiment, what they were explaining was you're dealing with this particle of, 2 particles of light. What technically they can do up to 7 reliably before it goes south on them. But you can you instead of just being able to flip that particle to a 1 or 0, the equivalent, it can do as many different positions as you can detect difference in the light frequency.
Okay.
So,
we're pretty good at that.
Yeah, we can, anybody that gets into their monitors and TVs and go, oh, how much different light, because we're beyond the 3 lights in your TV.
Right. Yeah.
And, it's a big deal. It's a lot of fidelity of information. Or in this case, you scale up. 1 bit can now do lots of numbers.
Yeah. And that was where I was going with it because
it shortens your line of code, the length of your line of code.
Right. But what I was thinking of is when I was doing my undergrad in computer science, there was theoretically at the time, I was dating myself a little bit. I was doing my my undergrad. Oh, what was it?
It's your turn to get called old.
Yeah, I know. Like 10, 12 years ago, working on it. And you have in classical computers, you've got your random access memory, which is volatile in that it needs power constantly flowing through it in order to store information. And we moved on from magnetic hard drive disks to solid state disks, which use, different principles like flash memory. The problem with flash memory is that you were talking about entropy. It affects that as well. So the more you write and read it, it breaks down over time. Granted, it's a long enough time that it's commercially viable, which is why we're using it in most of our things today. All of your smartphones and the cost has come down. Every laptop computer now has a solid state memory. But using the Spintronics, you can create what's called a magnetoresistive RAM, which is essentially RAM that does not require constant power to flow through it in order to store information. So in that
Right.
case, you can exponentially increase battery life because those chips don't need a constant flow of energy to store information.
Yeah, I'm probably going to pull from this in the future. There's another story we won't go into today, but I think a lot of these things we're talking about really play into the potential of a future story, and I find this stuff really fascinating, even if I don't really understand it. But
Right.
I think where I get excited is when I see the potential of what that means in the real world when they're able to reliably bring it up to production scale,
Hmm.
and that's really all these cool things we read about.
Yeah.
The really big thing is, okay, cool, they did it like this, the 2D graphene, right? Everyone's
Hmm.
got real excited. Oh, we can make a space rope, a cable that
Yeah.
goes to space. It's so strong.
I mean, graphene
Until
is awesome.
yeah, until they go, yeah, but the biggest solid piece we can make is only about 2 centimeters right now. We got some production issues we got
Well,
to work
yeah,
on.
if you want it like pure, if you don't care about purity, you can make any size.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So
So I think it's time for what grinds my gears.
yeah, go for it. Take that one away.
I have some really fresh examples from my drive from one city to another today and back. All right. So turn signals, if you didn't know, were originally arm signals out of the
Yeah,
car.
half the cars I've had, they put them where the windshield wiper and the light switch is supposed to go.
Yeah, yeah. So Buick initially introduced like dedicated signals on cars back in 1939, which means we're coming up on the oh math in public 90th year.
Well, that's probably why a lot of people don't know about turn signals. A lot of people have never had a Buick.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, they've been standard on cars since the
oh,
60s.
they have. Okay.
Yeah. So it's still been several decades that these have been on vehicles. Every new vehicle comes with them. They're
To
checked.
include most motorcycles.
Yep. They are checked at the factory to work properly. People do not use them. Like certain people do. The
I'm just old
majority of the
enough.
drivers I've been dealing with on a daily basis are not using them.
I'm just old enough. I remember I had to use them once a year when I take my vehicle in for its inspection prior to getting my new sticker to put on my license plate.
Yeah, yeah, and where I currently live, it is part of the safety inspection to make sure that your signals work. Otherwise, my classic Mini wouldn't have failed.
So, what's
But
the
tonight, when
story?
I was driving, there was at least three cars going in excess of 90 miles an hour, and I know that for a fact because I was doing 10 over the speed limit with the flow of traffic in the left lane, and these idiots were flying by. And at this particular point on the interstate, it's 5 lanes wide. This one car went across all 4 lanes over to the slow side in order to get around traffic because we weren't moving quick enough for him. And he eventually just came up on traffic and slowed down. That happened at least two more times on my drive out tonight. And so I want people to know that it's called a signal because it allows you to signal your intent. And it
Wait.
allows other people to know this guy is moving from lane to lane or making a turn, and it makes it safer for everyone. So if you're out there and you're not using your turn signals ever, you are a selfish person and you don't care about anyone else on the road.
I maybe I misunderstood you, and maybe I'm the idiot here. Did you say it's a signal to signal your intent? Because everybody I see, they turn on the turn signal as they're changing lanes when they use them. You're saying
Yeah.
you're supposed to turn it on before you start changing lanes?
Every single state driver training program tells you that you should signal before you move your car from lane to lane or
Oh yeah.
into a turn. Yeah.
Okay. Joking aside, any day I go driving, if I don't consciously notice that it happens, it's probably because it's not right in my bubble of concern.
Yes.
Because I am constantly looking for the idiot who's going to change lanes and slam on his brakes to turn right.
Yeah.
And I have avoided many an accident very aggressively because of this.
Yeah. And I use my turn signals regularly to the point where I will signal if there are no other cars around because it's just muscle memory.
I will
think
admit,
the opposite case is, in fact, what these people are dealing with. They never use them, so they never think about using them. There's no muscle memory built in there, so they're just going to do what they're going to do.
So on the opposite end of that spectrum, I also, I'm not saying I have never been an offender, but I use it so I don't think about it. If I'm
Yes.
turning right, it just my hand catches the turn
Yes,
signal. If I'm
exactly.
turning left,
Muscle memory.
yeah. If I'm on a really busy, you know, road, interstate going through the middle of a very busy city, I may even very intentionally turn it on and wait till somebody acknowledges because
Yeah.
they slow down or something, right? Just to be able
Yes.
to change lanes
Yeah.
safely. But I do it so consistently and so habitually. There is in my town, there is a road where when you come into the old downtown where the courthouse is. It's 4 lanes, 2 lanes each direction, and then it splits as you come to the downtown, and it becomes one way around one side of the courthouse and one way on the other side, not a roundabout.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
just splits and then it
Splits.
rejoins later. Yeah, and when you come, it's not a general. It is definitely. They must have renamed the road at some point because you take a hard right and then a hard left to jink around, and you can see where there's a road there that dead ends as you now take over the naming convention on the road.
Yeah.
And there's a light there, and when the light's green, you just go right. That's your only option. There's no left or right turn there. There's also no left turn there.
Yeah.
And not every time, but a lot of the time, I catch myself turning on my turn signal when that is the only I'm just following the road.
only option. Yeah.
the only option. No turn signal required. And
I'll give it to you. If you are in a turn-only lane, I trust that you're going to turn. You have signaled your intent by being in that turn lane. So unless you're the guy who changed his mind at the last second and cut me off to go straight as I was going to pass him the other day, you're gold.
Yeah. And I always notice when other people do the same thing on that part of the road, and I'm always like, yeah, somebody else uses their turn signal. It's rare, though. Very rare.
Yeah. It is. It's rare enough that I applaud people. Like, if you're going to cut me off and you signal as you're doing it, I'm going to give you a pass. But if you cut me off like the guy did earlier today and then immediately slammed on your brakes without any signaling, like, I don't think people would use their brake lights if they weren't hardwired into the pedal. That's what I think.
I believe you. Yeah. I believe you for sure.
All right. Well, this has been fun. You've been listening to Two Beards Debrief, and I'll put on my radio show voice for you at the end here. And I will thank you, one listener, for listening to us this evening. And we will see you next week.
Next week.
Thanks, everybody.